Stagger is one of the game-defining elements in Armor Core 6. In this video, I will fully break down the mechanic and share what I believe to be the most permanent stun lock build we can make right now. So what is Stagger? When attacking an enemy with any weapon, you'll do damage to their health or armor points, but you'll also do impact damage to their stagger bar. This is represented by the yellow bar above the health. When staggered, the unit will be stunned and will take direct hit damage for a short duration. Now, this doesn't mean the damage bypasses any resistances, those will still apply, but your damage will be multiplied based on the direct hit adjustment stat, as well as any bonus damage from operating system tuning. And I did a lot of research dissecting all of the videos from the content creators who've released some of that early access footage, as well as the preview, and I think I figured out the algorithm of how this damage is calculated when you have a unit staggered. If we look at this clip, we can see that the handgun did 163 damage to a non-staggered unit. And then, once that unit was staggered, it did 383 damage. So the base damage is supposed to be 176 as seen on the status sheet. So if we subtract the actual damage, that 163, from the base damage, we will find that this unit has some kinetic resistance of 13. Assuming no tuning upgrades, we will take that base damage of 176 times the handgun's direct hit adjustment. This is a percentage represented in a decimal form of 2.25, so that equals 396 theoretical damage. We then take that base resistance, the 13 kinetic resistance, and then we get that final number of 383 damage. Now, these are not perfect calculations. Because I don't know what these influencers are using in their OS tuning, there are damage modifiers that I can't account for. So sometimes my numbers will be off from what's being shown on the screen, and there might also be some resistance calculation that I just don't know of or I'm aware of. Certain units can have special armor. So those are two things that I don't have, so keep that in mind and just use this as an estimation. I've tried 5 different ways to calculate the damage after a unit has been staggered. Trying, do we take into account the resistances before or after the multiplier takes effect? Do you use the base damage? Do you use the actual damage? And that's where I came up with the conclusion of that we use the base damage times the direct hit adjustment, which I'm calling DHA now. And then we subtract the flat resistance at the end. And so I think that's how it works. It didn't work with the bazooka. I have those right here. And I think that's because either there's a damage multiplier I'm not accounting for, and then there's also additional resistance. And those two in combination is making this number not populate correctly at 1580 instead of the 1524. But what I want to point out is the power of the direct hit adjustment and actually how wide range it is. So remember, that's a percentage. So like 225% is that handgun. So that's what we saw in this. It went from 163 to 383 damage. So that's a substantial gain. And so when you're looking at those base numbers, it's really important to consider what is that weapon used for. And so if we look at these ones, they're only 1.25. Those are the plasma missile launcher and the plasma rifle. They're really not meant to be used as weapons after the unit is staggered and do substantial damage. So when you're choosing what weapons you want for your stagger build, definitely consider this row. We got I think the grenade launcher, linear rifle, Gatling gun, and some other stuff that's really quite powerful. But first, we have to stagger the enemy. To stagger them, we need to fill that yellow bar completely until it starts flashing red. There are many things to consider when designing a build. First is the base impact damage. Obviously, higher stats here will be beneficial for staggering enemies, but there's a more important stat in my opinion. In the advanced data screen, you will find accumulative impact. At first, I thought it was a bonus impact damage that you would get when you have consecutive hits or start building up the next stagger bar when they were still down and in a staggered state. But after watching some other clips very closely, I learned some other things, and I found that this stat is actually a negative effect. Check this out. You can see in this clip by Boomstick Gaming, which I really appreciate. You can find his link in the bio below for his video. He's testing out the Gatling gun and a whole bunch of other guns. And I literally counted every shot he took up to 50, and it just barely covered the first block here. Now, the Gatling gun has an impact of 25. If we do the math on it, so base impact times the 50 rounds, that would equal 1250. But if we then compare that to the bazooka with an impact of 1,150 in one shot, It's clearly filling the bar more than the Gatling gun. And that's because only the first hit on a completely empty stagger bar will actually give you that full base impact. Otherwise, you're going to be reduced down to the accumulative impact damage. And this can have a huge range. And in this case, the accumulative impact is 11. So to calculate the 50 rounds for that Gatling gun, the first round would be 25, and the next 49 would be 11. So if we calculate 25 plus 11 times 49, we come up with 564, which makes sense in my head because I'm estimating that each one of these blocks is about 500 for this enemy type. And then if we look back at the bazooka, it filled up that block plus a little bit extra, and that's what the 1150 was. We'll see if that's correct. Maybe there's some other resistances that I'm not understanding, but that's kind of where I'm thinking that this works. And this is where I got really lost in the math. And I created the Polymos weapon database. And so this is a G sheet that has like every weapon I could find from all the early access influencers. Huge shout out to Fighting Cowboy and Vadi. You guys actually took a whole bunch of the advanced data screenshots and just cycled through those, gave us a lot of that. So that's where I was able to make this full little G sheet. So I put in all of the data, and then I also put in a whole bunch of different formulas. I got some other pages. This is legit. I'm trying to make this so we can really calculate everything you'd ever need for this kind of thing. But I really want to point out is this percent accumulative impact reduction per round. So what this is doing is we're calculating how much is the drop off from the impact, the base impact per round versus the accumulative impact per round, and then converting that to a percentage. And so you can see it's at a huge range. We're talking 17.39 to 73.44. And so if we look at the weapons those are, the first one is that burst assault rifle. So that means that after that first round, or if it's already been staggered even just a little bit, it's going to be doing basically nothing. It's got a 73% drop off. I think it's right here. It's 51 accumulative impact per round. So that's really, really tiny. It's not going to be doing much. And then if we look back at the top, so we got that 17.39% drop off. So that's very little. That's the bazooka. And it starts at 1150, goes down to 950. So it's a big flat reduction at 200, but it's still a great weapon at just keeping a unit growing in stagger, finishing them, getting them stunned, and then letting your other weapons kind of finish them off. So yeah, I think the bazooka is a great way to go there. I would also like to point out, if we do this by flat accumulative reduction per round, we got this one that drops 770. This is the laser blade that just really loses almost all its value. So it can impact 1100, and it drops all the way down to 330. So if you're trying to push stagger with your laser blade, you better do it in that first strike before you fire anything, then fire all your other weapon systems, because it's not going to do much for impact after that first strike. So yeah, that spreadsheet took me a long time to fill out. Honestly, it's really something I'm proud of. There's a lot of formulas in there, some that you don't see yet, and it's something that I think could be beneficial to anyone who's trying to build a mech and just get an understanding of how everything works. I will be sharing this with the community. In the next video, I'll be dropping it, or if we can get 200 likes on this video, we will share it early in the community tab. So yeah, go ahead and like this video. Like, hit the like button. Yeah.
Smash the like button.
Here are some gameplay tips to help you boost your damage on staggered enemies. Starting with a reminder that you only get the damage multiplier once the enemy is staggered, and only for a short time. We've seen stagger times ranging from 3 to 8 seconds. In some cases, these reload times can be greater than 5 seconds. And then you also consider the projectile air time to reach your opponent. It could be way past the time that stagger is actually working. Also, the damage is calculated before impact activates the stagger. You will not get the bonus damage unless the enemy is completely staggered. Even if their stagger bar is basically full and you know a bazooka will easily push it to fill up, there will be no added damage for that shot. You can only get the base damage. So it's important you have a couple weapons ready to follow up once the enemy is staggered. It doesn't help to unload everything, get it staggered, and then just sit there, waiting for them to reload. So one tip would be to play it slow earlier. Let's say you have that bazooka that can easily do a third of their stagger bar. Hold your fire. Give some time for the other 3 weapon systems to reload. Then fire that bazooka, unleash a full volley of projectiles right after it at that staggered unit, doing maximum damage. Or have a smaller weapon system max out the stagger bar so your heavy weapons can gain more from that direct hit multiplier. Another stagger tip, assault boosting, where your mech is playing Superman, can also help increase your impact as well. There are two ways. One, when firing a weapon and assault boosting, and I'm not sure if it's just limited to kinetic weapons, but while assault boosting and firing at the same time, it will increase the impact damage. Second, if you have tank legs on, you can actually ram your opponents, applying some impact as well, and it could be the difference between activating stagger or not, when you're doing a full charge, firing your weapons, and then you ram them to finish the stagger off. Now, let me share the ultimate stagger build. This monstrosity has one mission: to put your enemies to sleep time and time again. Let me introduce you to Oblivion. Let me introduce you to Armageddon. Let me introduce you to Cataclysm, to a big tank that's going to ruin your enemy's day. Starting with the left shoulder, we have a traditional favorite, a make-my-day weapon, the laser cannon. When this railgun is fully charged, it'll take one of Zeus's lightning bolts and give your enemies a shocking welcome surprise. With an initial impact of 750, this weapon will set the tone. On the left shoulder, we have a surprise for you. This will actually be the active homing missile. See, another laser cannon will actually do less impact than this homing missile due to the huge drop-off in accumulative impact, making it only good for that initial shot. Our homing missile will provide 370 impact, whereas a second laser cannon would only do 180 or 280 impact if fully charged, resulting in a net difference of 100 to 200 net impact damage. Now, I've already mentioned what's on my left arm. We're talking the weapon that has the highest accumulative impact damage ratio of all of the weapons, the DFBA 06 Zhuanghe Bazooka. This creature is the perfect balance of damage and impact that will be a huge asset to keep a steady flow of shut the fuck up. Oh, it hurts, with a heavy accumulation damage of 950. But it was kind of hard to decide not to take the laser blade. This has the highest direct hit damage per round of all of them. We're talking over 3,400 damage for one attack once that unit is staggered. Unfortunately, its accumulative impact per round is only 330, making it basically unusable in our purely impact build. But that leads us to the main event, the right arm. I don't think it's hard to guess, but we got a grenade launcher. But not that weak-ass Iridian, I'm talking about the fat DFGR 07 Go Chen that will end your opponent if you land it. It has an accumulative impact of 1,160. It will ensure if your opponent is not staggered yet, he will sit down. And if that enemy is staggered, this weapon has the potential to do over 2,500 damage. These four weapons, if comboed correctly, and this laser cannon is charged, will do a cumulative of 3,238 impact. Just to put that in reference, the Juggernaut boss only seems to have around 1,500 to 2,000 stagger to fill its bar, so we will most likely be able to stagger anything when we fully combo them. For the rest of the build, you better believe we're going to have some tank treads. We need those so we can boost around and ram people to apply just a little bit more stagger. For our arms, we're going for max weight carry as well, because we need to be able to carry these cannons. The bazooka, the grenade launcher, they are not light, and we need them to be able to support that to the best of their ability. The FCS, we're going medium to long range. All of these are the medium to long range, so we want to be able to make sure we're landing our targets, landing our hits. The booster, we're just going to try and get whatever we can out of that. We need max speed, so when we ram people, we're hitting them hard. For the expansion, we're going assault armor. When we activate that, if we're in range, that's another way we can apply some impact. So we're going to have assault armor. The other ones are just defense. And everything else, we got the generator core head. We're just going to make that as heavy as possible. If they actually applied some physics in this game and you have momentum, so the faster you're going with more weight, the more stagger, more impact you can do, I'm going to make this as heavy as possible. This thing's going to be indestructible. Okay, so obviously this probably won't work for all situations and missions, but hey, I had a lot of fun building this meme build, and honestly, I feel like I learned a lot, especially reading through the data, and I feel totally prepared to go to Rubicon. Now, I will be sharing all of my real S runs and PvP builds, and if you feel like you learned something, or if you laughed at my silly jokes, please ask. Like the video, subscribe for more content. I'll see you next time.